Good morning, students. We started this chapter, manufacturing industries, and we discussed yesterday that how important manufacturing was for in any economy and for any country for that matter. And of course, we looked into what was the definition of manufacturing, whereby we discussed that manufacturing, of course, you use natural resources or different kind of raw materials to give a completely to produce a completely and entirely a different kind of thing, but all that taken, manufacturing has to be done on a mass basis. It has to be done when you have the involvement of larger volumes. That is the time when you can use the term manufacturing. Otherwise, if you are just producing something which numbers 5, 10, or probably 12 or 15, it would not be known as manufacturing as such, right? Manufacturing has to be volumes, and then it has to be essentially meant for the market, right? Manufacturing is not about charity at all, right? Because you do it in such mass numbers, so it has to be sent to the market as well. So today we looked into, and we also saw the importance of manufacturing. So coming to the last paragraph, which is an important paragraph here, that agriculture and industry are not exclusive of each other. And this is particularly pertinent to an economy like India, where most of the that is the population of this country, is still somehow engaged and involved in the agricultural activities, though this must be mentioned that if you actually give out the proportion of the segment of population that is involved in agriculture, and the GDP that is comprised of the agricultural output, that is now falling down. The contribution of agriculture in India's GDP contribution has definitely been falling down compared to the secondary and the tertiary industry. So, what we look at here is agriculture and industry are not exclusive of each other, they move hand in hand. For instance, the agro industries in India have given a major boost to agriculture by raising its productivity. They depend on the latter for raw materials and sell their products such as irrigation pumps, fertilizers, insecticides, pesticides, plastics and PVC pipes, machines and tools, etc., to the farmers. Thus, development and competitiveness of manufacturing industry has not only assisted agriculturists in increasing their production, but also made the production process is very efficient. So this is essentially trying to tell you, students, that agriculture, unlike the earlier times where you would have one or two oxen, and you would actually plow the field with your plow, जिसको आप खेत जोतना या हल जोतना कहते थे पुराने ज़माने में, because but that could be done in the early times. Early times would mean even just about before independence. That is how it used to be, where the farmers would be using the animal power essentially to for their agricultural outputs. And there were two things involved. The first thing was that the people were naturally poor. Most of the land was never theirs, that they were always working for the jamindar sahib or someone, or it was a contract farming. And the other thing was, in those times, the fertilizer and pesticide and insecticides and the irrigation facilities like today were not there. Like today, you can actually dig out water from underground through tube wells, and आप अपने खेतों में डालते हैं. But at 50-60 years ago, all this was not there. So the agricultural output was not also much. So you could do it with the help of your animals, and you could, it was sufficient for you. And the other very important thing in those years was most of the people were involved in agriculture. So हर किसी के घर में कुछ ना कुछ हो रहा होता था, and that is the reason why it was known as a sustenance agriculture, or rather a subsistence economy. The whole economy was mainly about subsistence, that is, whereby you were manufacturing things primarily for your own consumption, for your own production. You were the most important consumer, and only after you have had used enough of it, फिर कुछ बच जाता था, then you used to take it to the market. At least that's what most of the people used to do. But as machinery became more and more widespread, लोगों के पास tractors आ गए, tube wells आ गए, and then naturally nation, now we were an independent nation, so definitely India needed more and more. And as we had seen yesterday, that the emphasis of in independent India was about the large and the massive manufacturing industries. So naturally, there were more and more people now who would be involved in the factories and the service industry, the banking, the insurance. So naturally, you had to produce more and more food items for those people who would now not be involved in the agricultural activities, whether directly or indirectly. Okay, so contribution of industry to national economy, contribution of industry to national economy. Over the last 2 decades, the share of manufacturing sector has stagnated at 17% of GDP, out of a total of 27% for the industry, which includes 10% for mining, quarrying, electricity, and gas. This is much lower in comparison to some Asian economies where it is 25 to 35%. That is, 25 to 35% of the uh, economic activities, GDP contribution is made by the manufacturing industry. The trend of growth rate in manufacturing over the last decade has been around 7% per annum. The desired growth rate over the next decade is 12% per annum. Since 2003, manufacturing is once again growing at a rate of 9 to 10% per annum. Students, I wish I could have shown it and explained it to you in the class, because particularly they have now mentioned here the East Asian economies. This is much lower in comparison to some East Asian economies. Guys, the East Asian economies here, they are talking particularly about the countries like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and of course China. Students, you have to understand that these countries are the Asian tigers, and not just the Asian tigers. When you look at their global contribution, even when it comes to manufacturing, it is massive. It is much more than India, much more than India. Their exports are far more than India's exports. That is, I'm talking about the manufacturing exports. We produce nothing. Of course, we produce definitely, to keep boosting our egos and morale enough. We produce enough to kind of do that for us. But then when you actually take our manufacturing and start comparing it with what the other tigers and the flourishing economies and the developed economies, forget about world, even in Asia produce, then we surely have a lot of catching up to do. Okay, so industrial locations are complex, and students, you would see it, you would see it in this chapter also, that how important manufacturing is. Of course the other sectors are important, that the service industry. We often talk about promotion of service industry and the contribution that it makes in the GDP of any economy. But manufacturing is, you cannot, there is no substitute for manufacturing. Industrial locations are complex in nature. These are influenced by availability of raw material, labor, capital, power, and market. It is rarely possible to find all these factors available at one place. So naturally, it is obvious. So it is very difficult to find that you would find raw material and then labor and then capital and the power and the market, everything in one place. It is impossible, because say for example, raw material. Now, raw material, as I told you yesterday, would be found in, probably, say, let's pick up coal, right? Let's pick up coal, which would be used to, for whatever, whether your power plants, or if I'm talking about iron ore, or whatever, the copper ore or the aluminium ore, whatever it is, you would find it in some desolate part of India, right? Now, if you have it there, then you probably would find that there is a lack of labor. काम करने वाले मजदूर नहीं है वहाँ पे. Of course, you have abundance of raw material, but you do not have people to extract that raw material. Now when the word spreads, the people might also come, the labor force might also come to extract all that raw material which is there. That is fine, but then this is the labor force. Now where would you get the money from? The labor would ultimately do some stuff, and at the end of the day they would expect definitely some money for the hard work that they have put in throughout the day. Now where does that capital or the money come from? Right? Power, market. Now even if I produce something, even if I manufacture something, then I should have a system whereby that manufactured product actually gets sold in the market. Now you might be having all the raw materials and iron ore in the states of Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand or West Bengal or Bihar for that matter, not particularly Bihar, but definitely Jharkhand and West Bengal and Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh is definitely yes. But then where is the market for that? Do you think you have massive industries that come up in the areas of in the states of West Bengal and Chhattisgarh and Odisha? Definitely not. Even if you have the factories there, the consumption of whatever you have produced is not there. The market is not there. You would have still have to look for buyers of the output, whether in India or in different parts of the world. So it is never an easy thing. Manufacturing and industrial manufacturing, particularly, is never an easy thing because it involves a lot of ingredients and uh, all those ingredients. It is very difficult to have that all that amazing cocktail in one location. Everything would be scattered. That's how mischievous the world is. Everything would be scattered, and then you have to bring in all the best of brains and the best of strategies to ensure that everything comes in one place and falls together. So consequently, manufacturing activity tends to locate at the most appropriate place where all the factors of industrial location are either available or can be arranged at lower cost. After an industrial activity starts, urbanization follows. Sometimes industries are located in or near the cities. Thus, industrialization and urbanization go hand in hand. It is essentially trying to tell you that once you have industries, then naturally a lot of people will come around, they start living there, and definitely industrialization, guys. You have to understand one thing, that unlike unlike farming, unlike farming, manufacturing industry does is not on the mercy of nature. Farming is about successful monsoons, matti उपजाऊ honi chahiye, it should be fertile enough, the quality of seeds, and then you should also not have all that infection of the crops, and then and all the insects and all that thing should not be there for you to it. So there are a lot of factors which are beyond your control. You cannot control the amount of rainfall that you get. You cannot control the fertility of land beyond an extent. You cannot control whether your crops get affected by fungus or whatever it is. You cannot control any of that, and that is why it depends very much on the vagaries of nature. But industrial manufacturing does not. Andi aaye, tufan aaye, you just need the raw materials to be there. You have the factories, you have the massive shop floors, you have machineries, you have now engineers, you have the technicians, and you keep manufacturing, and the truck is waiting outside to take that output to different parts of India, or even different parts of the world for that matter, right? And that is what leads to the urbanization. When the factories come up, the people set up their shops around it, they start living there, and definitely the quality of life is much better. The best of example, the whole city of Jamshedpur or Tata is about the Tata Iron and Steel and Telco, that is locomotives. That is where they manufacture trucks. Similarly with Gurgaon, one Maruti factory made the whole lot of difference in Gurgaon. And now Gurgaon now today happens to be one of the most urbanized towns and cities of India. Thank you.